called RLE, run length encoding, which this should be very, very straightforward, but I bet it won't be because nothing ever is. So, importing run length encoded files. So we should have some run length encoded files here. So let's take a look here. So, oh dear. Okay. What on earth are we doing here? Where else do we ever import inactivated stuff? I mean,
I don't think I know of any other case.
Okay, so we're going to invent a whole new thing. Okay, so if I say activate this, oh, come on. Okay, come on. Okay, are we supporting that in Cellular Automaton or not?
We're not.
Okay, so this is not useful.
Correct.
So
we know we want some
why
kind
don't
of
we
a
convert
mapping.
those things to our Cellular Automaton specification? What is our specification for that?
Live. This is the live rule.
I don't care. B3 S23, we have a representation of that. Is Ed on this call?
Oh, he was in the previous meeting.
Well, he's supposed to be here, right? He's listed as being here.
I'll go call him.
It's okay. So for Cellular Automaton, I don't know the translation immediately, but see these associations wherever it is, growth cases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what those represent. I would guess that, well, let's take a look. I would guess somewhere here it will say how that works. Now, the question is whether we can, and this is coming up in some other cases as well, whether we can return. We definitely do not want to return this, okay? We want to return something. We don't want to invent a new mechanism for this incredibly bizarre corner case. Am I making sense? So,
but even if the rule is something that our Cellular Automaton supports, we still return the inactive because we want to see it in an inactive.
No, we do not. We figure out how to do this so that we can feed the whole thing, including the initial condition, to Cellular Automaton. So, for example, in here, okay, so if we go down here and we say, well, where is it? Rules specified by associations. Okay, so there it is with things specified by an association. Okay, so I suspect what we should do is to have it be the case that that first argument, because as I say, I think this is going to come up in some other cases too. In fact, it just came up in a case that I was just working on. That first argument should be capable of having an initial condition piece in the association and then drop the second argument. It's slightly weird, but alternatively, we could do something where the first argument is a nested association or has the possibility of being something of the form, Cellular Automaton of rule and then initial condition, and then we drop the second argument. Am I making sense? So that we then return that combination from the system. Right now, in terms of export, we're going to need some mechanism as well to export. So we're going to need something like this for that too, aren't we? Does that make sense?
Is
right, an inert symbolic form.
Is that a symbolic form? It's not evaluating to the first evolution of that cellular automaton?
No. The full thing evaluates, but look, the whole point is without the initial condition, right, and without the number of time steps. So what we could do here, I mean, I suppose what we could do is we could say something like that. I mean, it's a little bit hacky, but Do you get what I'm saying? To keep the structure of the arguments, but to have then the initial condition come from the first argument. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but I think it's for Jose or Ed to comment. We're not developing cellular automaton, so I don't.
I understand that, but that's why these discussions are complicated, right? Because you can't do what you're doing in a vacuum.
Yep.
And returning something that doesn't even evaluate isn't useful. I mean, it's great that you can decode the sparse array and so on, but there's more to it. Is Ed here?
Yes.
Okay. So we need a decoder for these rule specifications into our rule specifications. Is this complicated? What is B3S23 in terms of our rule specifications?
Birth 3, survive 2 and 3. Yeah, we've written that several times. I'll have to find the code again.
Okay, could you go look for it right now? And okay, so let's be specific here. We've said this is growth cases, and what is the other one? So we name them growth cases, right? So this has to know. So to make this work, right? It's got to have dimension 2, right? It's got to know that, because that presumably is specified by this RLE format. Yes or no? Does it say how many dimensions it's in? The sparse array implicitly says how many dimensions it's in. Right. Okay. So what you're going to need to return, typing, avoid typing, and what is here? What you're going to need to return is whatever, and I don't know how it knows the neighborhood. Does B3S23 does not in and of itself specify the neighborhood? How do you know that? From that specification. Ed.
Oh, I'm getting the code.
Okay. All right. Fine.
If you're looking to which rule B3S23 corresponds.
No, we just figured that out from Ed. But what we need to know is there's in here, you see these pieces, right? B3 must be growth cases. S23 is growth survival cases. Okay. The problem is you have to say what neighborhood the rule operates on, or that's all meaningless. You have to say in here, right? We have to say, so I don't think that's the way we do it. We just say dimension 2. Okay, so then we say neighborhood. Well, we don't know. We need to know that, right? And then we would say, in this particular case, growth cases, arrow, list 3, growth survival cases, arrow 2.
I posted code in the chat.
If it's long code, the chat is a bad place. No, you'll need to send it by email. It won't work from there.
Okay.
Or it's very unlikely to work from there. Nope, didn't work. Send it by email, please, to me.
And sent.
Okay. All right. Can you answer the question? How do we find out from what is in the RLE file what the neighborhood is for the rule? Wait a minute. This isn't right. This isn't what we want, Ed. This is not useful. No, Ed. What we're looking for is the converter from the string to this form, okay? We already have this association which perfectly well represents those things.
So string to number.
Yes, that's all we need. Well, no, but we need, where's the complete grammar of what can show up in an RLE file? Who has that complete grammar? That's what I'm asking for.
Don't think that exists because.
Okay, you want me to go find it? You want me to go find it? I can go look at the source code and find it, right? Do I really need to do that?
I don't think it exists because there's much more complicated cases that Golly handles.
Okay.
They do thousands of different weird, like Margulis and.
I understand. So do we. So can we. So we have to translate those things. That's the point. That's what we're signing up for when we agree to, do a format, right?
Right,
So
but they've got hundreds or maybe
really? Let me see
thousands of different cases.
Okay, so where is that?
Well, they've got special code written in Lua, Pascal, and other languages to handle all these different rule cases from.
Okay, this sounds
Golly.
like bullshit to me. Okay, I'll simply email these people and try and get the information myself. This is not really useful. This is exactly not what we wanted. Okay. Okay, this isn't useful. This is not going to be helpful. The fact that we can convert the sparse array is nice, but the rest of it is not useful. Are there test files for this from Golly, for example?
Yes.
Where are the test files?
I can send you the link in a second.
Please. What is this? What is single state here? What is that? Just
that basically means that this file contains a single state information, while multi-state means that there are more than, like in this particular case, this is a file that contains information about two states, the initial state and some arbitrary states stored in the file.
Okay, but so what do we get? What do we generate then? We're still generating for some reason, we're still generating a two-dimensional array in that case. Why are we not generating a list of arrays, for example?
Right. For that, we have this full data. So we basically decided, since the main thing is the initial state, we will be always returning the initial state information. And if someone wants to extract the full information, we have this element full data that you basically get a list of associations that describes the whole file.
Hold on, but is the raw file a run length encoding of a single two-dimensional array?
This multi-state?
I'm sorry?
This multi-state file?
Yeah, this multi-state file. Is it a representation of a single two-dimensional array, or is it a representation of multiple two-dimensional arrays?
This particular one is representation of two 2D arrays.
Two 2D arrays. So we should return a list, I think. But okay, I understand that. So what are you doing here? You're combining those two 2D arrays somehow? How are you combining?
If you go to full data subsection, so you have basically a list of associations describing the whole file.
Okay.
And so basically each of them corresponds to
okay, so what are you doing in the first case? You've got 5501 elements, so you just kept the first one here. That's the only
right. Yeah. Only the first state information is returned whenever you request an element, except for full data.
How does that correspond to other things we're doing, Shadi?
Maybe we could do image and image list. Currently in TIFF, for instance, if we have a multi-frame TIFF, we do a list. By default, we return a list of images.
In the case where it's a multi-frame.
Yes, when it's a single frame. So the default import element changes depending on whether we have a single frame or multi-frame. We could potentially do the same thing here. There are
go ahead.
Except that the image may become very large. There is a possible issues section down in the notebook that says sometimes these sparse arrays are very large.
Well, because they're originally represented in hashed form and we're dehashing them. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's not going to work either. There's nothing is useful by dehashing them because we're just not going to be able to do anything with them.
Yep.
So.
And then it seemed like from the discussion from Ed, most of the time people care about initial condition anyways. It's rare that people store alternative states in the RLE file. So the default being image seemed to be a fine default. We could add an image list,
yeah,
which is an
okay.
explicit image list.
Well, that's fine, but I'm not sure the image. I mean, does Cellular Automaton work with image? Does Cellular Automaton work with image? It certainly could. I don't know whether it does. I think that was a thing that I said should happen a while ago. I'm not sure it did happen. Let's take a look.
That's, I think, one of the suggestions under the things to discuss, cellular automaton of rule, comma, image.
No, okay. Well, I think that should work.
Mhm.
If that works, I mean, look, this thing obviously has to be integrated with what Cellular Automaton does, or it's not really very useful. Okay.
I agree.
So if the default, and I don't think it's very useful to return something. If RLE is primarily used for Cellular Automata, I don't know whether that's the case. Is it the case?
It seems to be, yes.
Okay, well, in that case, we should return the thing that you stick into Cellular Automaton as the default thing, I think. Yeah, probably. Let me think about that for a second. The default element. Well, if Cellular Automaton accepted an image, I guess we could return an image as the default element. I mean, that assumes you know what rule it's dealing with. And perhaps we can assume that if you're doing this, it's like units or something, that there's a a reasonable default assumption that you know that. Okay, let's take a look at the test files here. Okay. That's interesting. What have those guys put on there? Wait a minute. Oh, this is something completely different. But where am I looking in this folder?
So this is called Live Wiki folder. So the link didn't work that I sent in the chat.
Let's try it again, but I don't think so. No,
Try this other one I sent, Stephen. See if
no, this
works.
didn't. It ignored the links. It just gave the top level.
Yeah, if the link from Shadi doesn't work, I also shared the whole folder with you, so you should be seeing it on your main page of OnCloud.
This worked. Okay. Okay, so let's open a typical. So what's this going to open in? Who knows? Oh, great. Okay, well, let's just what can we open this with? How can we? I mean, I guess we can just import this from. This is kind of a yucky thing to do. We could try saying file names here of that. I don't know if this is going to work. Does this have any chance of working? Nope.
I doubt it. No.
So is there a file colon URL here? Well, okay. So this, for example, I'll pick some random thing here. If I say copy that as a string, right? I should get the header information. Okay. So now, where is the, okay.
That's
so
the complete
X
thing.
equals 33, Y equals 8, rule equals whatever. That's the thing I'm dealing with there, right? That's the rule specification. Okay, these are comments here. These are structured comments, but are we preserving the structure of those comments?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right, let's pick another random example here. So this is the complete thing, or are there subdirectories?
No, this
is test files.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about some Game of Life test files? Do you think they have them?
I'm sure they do. I don't know the names to tell immediately.
No, it's just more of the same. Okay, so let's look then. Again, I mean, I'm a little disappointed that the Golly people didn't. I mean, they were working on some connector to Wolfram Language a few years ago, and for some reason that never got finished, and I guess we didn't communicate with them. But we obviously need to see what their grammar is, and they must have some central place in their source that shows their grammar, right? And we should go find that so we understand what we're dealing with. But it does seem to be the case that such a large majority of these are Game of Life things that's probably enough by default to give the image. So long as we can evolve the image in Cellular Automaton.
If you scroll down, Stephen, a bit.
Actually, you know what? That's not going to work because there's plenty of things which are hashed, which have this hashed format, which we don't deal with right now. So it's going to be crazy if we have something, right? So the hash thing is essentially a quad tree format of some kind. How does it relate to what we do with, for example, image pyramids and so on? Anybody know?
Sorry, I don't see a connection there.
Okay, so the hashing thing, actually, amusingly enough, Bill Gosper, somebody who we hear from practically every day, with all kinds of cool things he does, but originally announced that whole thing at a conference I organized in 1983. But the idea is, right? You understand the idea, and right now you are decoding that hashing, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but so the question is, if we were going to preserve the hashing in our system and actually run with it in Cellular Automaton, what would we do? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yep.
So what do we think the answer is? If we wanted to have an image, for example, or a sparse array that did that kind of hashing, right? That has a sub-element that, I mean, effectively, it's like some kind of patched version of sparse array, as in sparse array is giving you an individual element and it says, here it is, when it feels like giving it to you. But the hashing thing would be giving you a subarray that it says to place in a particular place when it feels like it, so to speak. Does that make sense? But it does so hierarchically.
One thing we might want to implement is Golly uses a Gosper's weird scheme, which is better than sparse arrays. We might want to implement that.
That's what I was just talking about, Ed. That's what I was just talking about. I asked the question, in Gosper's hashing scheme, what is the representation that we would use in our language of an array represented with that hashing scheme? Do you understand the question?
Right. Yeah, I don't think we have it yet.
No, we don't have it. That's why I'm asking, what would it be if we had it?
Pyramids are just rescaled. What you're explaining seem to be some, as you said, hierarchical partitioning.
What it is that you can say, in this scheme, you can say, this region, right? I mean, it's basically saying there's a lot of repeated regions. There's a lot of things that get repeated. And potentially you can do that hierarchically, but even one level would probably be very useful. So there might be I don't know, some, giant glider structure-y thingy that is a, 500 by 500 thing. And what one's saying is that thing, that subarray, is placed in this position. right? So you have essentially a list of subarrays. Eventually, you're going to place everything, but you can do this hierarchically. But you're basically saying to form the final array, you do it by placing hierarchically a sequence of subarrays at these relative positions in this thing, right?
Yeah.
So what is our mechanism for, if you want to place a subarray in a sparse array, how do you do it? See what I'm saying? Okay,
I'm
so
not sure we can do that thing because sparse array precisely refuses to get elements being arrays.
I agree.
But it would be nice to have that sort of extension, like constructing a matrix by blocks.
Yeah, right. And potentially hierarchically so. So, I mean, this would probably be something like hierarchical sparse array, and it would be something like, but I don't know how you would name the pieces. You would probably have something where, yeah, I don't know, in hash life, you're using hashes, I think, to name them, but I'm not sure that doesn't really make a difference that that's the way it works. But it will be some series of things that builds up to the full array.
Need an extra R in hierarchical.
I misspelled it horribly. Hierarchic. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, we don't want it to be implemented without the R. Okay, so look. Okay, first of all, to avoid what we're getting here, you should call this rule string or something. And comments, I don't understand these comments. So you have different kinds of it. If I were to import that file, wherever it was, the file that I was just looking at here. So if I did an import of this one, well, actually, it should just work in this version, right? It should just do its thing. So if I say that, comma, full data. Oops.
Are you in the same?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why that didn't work. That's a thing to check. That maybe doesn't pick up the MIME type of the HTTP request, which it should. I mean, and maybe not the MIME type, but at least the file extension there. I don't know how we do that exactly. Okay, so I specifically asked you, do you preserve? Oh, those are all comments there. No, they're not. Oh, I see. Name and what's O?
I think this is still a comment.
Well, it's not. It's obviously got a hash N and a hash O, which have been lost here. There's obviously some structure to this, which has been lost here. Okay. So we should find out what that actually means. Is there documentation for Golly? Okay, you know what I think we should do? I think we should get you guys in contact with one of the people who works on Golly, who was interested in doing this hookup several years ago. It sounds like you guys have done the heavy lifting part of that. It's time for them to give us a bunch of information about how to do this in more detail. I think that's where we have to go with this, because obviously you don't want to just squash out metadata here. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what the, probably hash means a generic comment, but obviously those letters mean something. Right? But I still think it's useful. Let's see whether we can figure out what to put in this version that doesn't deal with all these things. Our typical convention of saying full data, do we want to call this thing? I guess we call this data. What? Yeah. importing as an image may fail. So importing as data still somehow works. Oh, because that still remains sparse.
Right.
Correct.
At least that level of sparsity. Even if it isn't hashly sparse, it's at least sparse. But there'll be ones that fail because they only can be imported as hashly sparse things. Do you understand what I'm saying? Hierarchically sparse things. So I think what we should do, I think for now, although it's not going to work that well, but for now, we should make the default element be data. We should have a full data element. The default data element should, well, how do we deal with the multi-case? The multi-array case?
Data is still a representation of the first state only.
I understand that. I understand that. So what's the representation of the list of states?
We only have full data if I'm getting
okay,
the
all right,
question
I understand.
correctly.
I understand. So, Shadi, in other cases, what are we doing?
We have
here?
image and image list.
Okay,
date.
so why don't? So
yeah,
what?
data. I don't think we have ever introduced data list or.
Well, then maybe we shouldn't call this. Maybe the default element. Okay. Why don't we call this array and say array and array list and have the default element be array? Is that reasonable or is that crazy based on our other conventions?
That's fine. I think array and array list is fine. Okay.
So then for this version, we'll have array, array list, and now if I were to take one of these sparse arrays here, and I was just going to say image of that, will it work or will it come out inverted? It comes out inverted. Well, it's inverted in a sense. That's something we would have to deal with in the cellular automaton function, right? Is, in other words, what's black, what's white? Do you get what I'm saying? I mean, that the image data of that is the sparse array.
Yes.
But so in your case, if I were to say here, comma image, yeah, I don't think that's the right thing to do, because people who are looking at these images, right, they don't want to see the inverted image. And that means, so is there a way of putting humph? You understand the issue, right? So when you got this out here, how did you get that image? How did you get that? Oh, you got that with an array plot.
Yes.
But as an image, wow, which way around should we do it?
Do you want a graphics element?
What?
Do you maybe want a graphics element?
No, that's not useful, because you've got to be able to feed it to cellular automaton.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm thinking this image isn't very useful, that we shouldn't support that because it's just going to confuse people, and that it doesn't help anyway because it's going to unpack it. And, you know, to go from the sparse array to the image is easy anyway. Am I making sense?
Yes.
So, okay, so I think what we should support is array, array list. Those are the defaults. And full data, which I guess just looks like this and has either an array or an array list in it.
It's always going to have array, but it's then going to be a list of those associations that have arrays in it.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, fine. Fine. That seems
and
like
then
a fine way to do it.
By default, do you want for multi-state RLEs, we return an array list? Or should it just be array and return?
What do you mean a multi-state? What do you mean by that? You mean
yeah.
No, I say by default we should return the array list. In the case where there is an array list, what we should do is have the default switch between array and array list.
Yep, that's similar to other file formats,
yeah, I
image
understand.
file formats. Yep.
Right. It's fine. You can have a thing called comments, I guess, or should we call it metadata? Or let's just call it comments. That's fine. Use that for now.
But we're definitely going to look at that structure. I agree. If
Yeah,
we can
no, I understand. But so just pick out comments for now. And then I don't think we should bother with this rule thing, because I think that's a big muddle and we don't know what format to return it in. Okay. So I think for now, let's not do that.
As well as Cellular Automata. That's also
correct.
fun.
Let's not do that right now. Okay. So what is this? What on earth is Hutton 32?
Just a random pick, really, nothing
Then don't do
theoretical in background.
Then don't do something random. I mean, in other words, what we should do here, in the case where, okay, if it's a binary image, let's say it's a ternary image, okay? Presumably, there's a way of importing an RLE file without a rule specification. We should look at that. But that's what I would do. Don't make up a rule. Okay? In fact, I wouldn't make up a rule. Well, should you, by default, if it's a binary image, default to the B3S23 rule? That's a little unclear to me. I mean, in other words, the export, if you were to give that association, you know, you should be able to export as you're doing, presumably here. Presumably you can export the full association, correct?
Right, you can.
You know what? I would just put a file. I would just do it with export to RLE with the association. You can put the rule in and so on. I think if you don't do that, you should just not include a rule. Okay, you should just have the data. If you're exporting a pure sparse array, just, you know, export that. Now, is there any specification in the RLE format that says the depth of the array?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, well then, I mean, we'll see what it does. But I would just a naked thing without. Well, I see they've given this. So we need to find out, probably from them, what we should do if we basically don't think we know the rule. Do you get what I'm saying? Because the X equals thing we can fill in, but if here we just fill in something blank, presumably, and you can check their file format to see what to do. But that's what I would do there on the export. Okay. And I wouldn't really.
I have to check, but I think both Golly and us are going to fail for files like that without knowing the exact rule for the
but it doesn't make any difference. It's just. I mean, is the issue that you don't know the depth? What is the issue? Does this format have in it does that encode the bit depth or not?
No, but the thing I'm trying to say is that the decoding depends on the rule.
No, it doesn't. It only depends on the bit depth. It depends on the bit depth and the dimension. Right, a ternary rule will probably have different coding from a binary rule, and a rule in 2 dimensions has different coding from a rule in 1 dimension, probably. But other than that, it shouldn't be any difference. Right?
Right, and the rule defines whether it's a single state encoding or multi-state.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really see how it does it in this particular rule here. Maybe Ed knows.
With most cases for ternary and higher, they go to MCL format instead.
Well, do we support that?
No, we'll look at it.
Okay, so then let's just assume, I mean, okay, if it isn't binary, why don't we just fail? If this format doesn't even deal with higher than binary, I mean, I understand you've got a byte related one here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, how did that work? How does that work? How
So
does
there
it
is this Hutton32 rule,
Yeah, but that,
which is
we don't want to specify it using the rule. The rule has nothing to do with what the state is, other than defining the bit depth and the dimension, which we need to know. Does it deal with three-dimensional CAs?
currently no.
No, there's another program that is used for 3D. Name escapes me.
Okay. 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 Then just assume, okay, if it's a bit, for now, if it's if it's a sparse array with zeros and ones, export it with this default rule. If it isn't zeros and ones, give an error message. Okay, and the error message should say you need to give a rule specification.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. Meanwhile, okay. Yeah, well, that would be lovely, but that requires some kind of, I mean, did you guys look at that? Linking to this code base? I thought somebody had actually implemented that at some point. Yes, no?
We didn't. I think it's in Jose's hands at this point to do anything with cellular automata.
I have not heard about that.
Okay. Okay. All right. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to, so we've got a plan for 12.1 here of how to put basic support in there, right? Make sense?
Yep.
To everybody?
Just to clarify, this is a 12.0 backward incompatible. We are switching from the default image to default array, but I think that's a good change as well.
Why are we, I didn't even know this was in 12.0.
It was. Even earlier.
But we never reviewed it?
We did. It's experimental.
Okay, then we're switching.
And it was kept experimental for the same reason. We wanted
Then we're
to
switching.
just settle.
Leave it as experimental, but we're switching.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Listen, guys, this was a nicely presented, well done thing. And you know, it's a pity that the sort of underlying strategy wasn't quite right. What I'm going to do, there are two people, one who originally worked on Golly, one who's an enthusiast of it in current times. I'm going to connect you guys to them, and I'm going to let you guys work out how to actually make this connection work properly. Okay. So, but we've got something to put into 12.1. Make sense?
Yep.
Let me mention something. One of the complications with RLE rules is the weird rules like Patterson's worms, termites, the other 2D 2D Turing machines. They've come up with a whole bunch of different weird rule systems, hundreds of them, and usually the only thing they specify in the RLE is a single pixel.
Okay, so there's a language of those rule specifications, presumably.
Right. Some author somewhere will come up with a rule system like Patterson's worm. And
actually, you know what I just realized? You know what I realized? I'm sorry. I realized how we do the rule. That this is I realized how we should do this. I was wrong in what I originally said. This isn't what we should do. We shouldn't have the initial condition in there. That's just wrong. What we should do is this whole thing becomes the cellular automaton, because cellular automaton can represent symbolically a cellular automaton. Do you see what I'm saying? And then what we return is just that and the initial condition. Do you see what I'm saying? Because then what you can do to run it is you just apply the cellular automaton to that initial condition. But this becomes, so in the case of a Turing machine, for example, we have a symbolic specification for those too. So you basically are translating the representation of whatever it is into our symbolic representation. Does that make sense? And in worst case, that translates into an evolution function. I think that's unlikely to be, by the time it's some general piece of Lua code or something. I think we were working with the Lua people on some kind of hookup to Lua. And in the worst case, it's some weird piece of external code that's running, but it should just work, right? In other words, if that first argument, so just to clarify what this does, right? The way it's set up, if I just say cellular automaton 30, that becomes, that's just a thing. It sits there, right? But if I were to apply that to an initial condition or to a state, ta-da. Okay. Although our default is periodic boundary conditions, which might be different from theirs, but we'll worry about that later. I don't even know what is their default boundary condition.
Zeros.
Okay, all right. So in that case, then we would return something like this. And that, that's interesting. Okay, so that is in fact giving us the correct thing that is correct to be fed back into the cellular automaton that says keep there being zeros on the boundary. So that's right. It means that the thing will change size, right? If we do a nest list onto this, it will change size, which is a little weird and not what you get if you do multiple steps at a time, but still correct. Right, that's correct. It's just eating into the boundary. Okay, so that remains then that, looking at these hierarchical arrays is a separate thing. Another thing which I think would be interesting, and maybe one of the guys who's worked on the whole Golly thing would like to help us with this, is this kind of thing, using probably, since that's mostly of interest for 2D CAs, which we haven't optimized. We've optimized 1D CAs really extremely well, but I don't think we've optimized 2D ones because we haven't optimized them for the sparse case. I mean, we've probably actually done a pretty good job of optimizing dense ones, but not sparse ones. So, all right. Well, look, I think this is the main thing we wanted from this review, and as I say, nicely presented, good work, nice and clean. A few strategic bumps, we will connect you to the right people and hopefully get that dealt with. Okay.
So if I could make some suggestions.
Possibly, yeah. What?
Understanding MCL just to pull in multicolor data should be a priority.
Well, there's a limit to how much we are going to do in this particular area. I mean, let's just see let's see what, yeah, I understand that MCell is interesting. Yes, what's next?
And pick the rules we want to support, like 2D Turing machines.
Yeah, well, I understand. So for that we need the grammar, for which we need to talk to the people who've worked on this or look at the source code.
And also decide which ones we don't want to implement, like or Patterson's worms.
Any rule can be implemented. It's just a question, as I just explained, right? By using the scheme of having a function that does the evolution be the thing you return. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Any rule can be implemented, right? Which ones we choose to implement and how that works, I do not know the boundary, right?
Mm-hmm.
But any rule can be implemented. There's no limit, right? So it's just a question of understanding what's there and what the right path is to implement these things, because they're implemented, inside Golly in some form, right? Maybe we just use that implementation by calling some external language. Okay. Right, so that we don't have to re-implement it and get it wrong and and copy the bugs and all that kind of stuff. Maybe there's a way of having Golly disgorge that piece of code, You know, it's not used to disgorging the code, but maybe they could put something into it that will let one export with the code. And then we can import the code. And, you know, if it's something like Lua or Python, we can probably just run it. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. That's, I think.
A very small practical discussion. Where do we want this to be implemented? I think the mappings should be implemented, or better be implemented, in Cellular Automata, not in import-export, if you agree.
No. Which mappings? They're part of import-export. This has nothing to do with Cellular Automaton. If it's a mapping from some weird rule format to our Cellular Automaton function, it goes in the import-export framework.
So we don't want things like B3S23 as a string be supported.
No,
in the
I mean, we may have something called rule string in this format that gives you the string form, but that isn't really very interesting to us because there's not a lot we can do with it.
So perhaps rule system, and then you have the name of the rule and then the particular index?
No, I don't think so. We want it in a form that is, as I've said now 5 times, that is a function that can be applied to the data to
Right. This would be a function. It would be like rule system, Patterson worm.
No,
3000.
no, because we don't know what that means, right? That needs to turn into something which is a Turing machine. I think that one is more a mobile automaton, that has turned into something that says Turing machine of blah, 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 right? So that we can natively implement it. Not implement, we can natively simply run it, right? So the onus is on the import-export framework to take what exists in the RLE file and turn it into something that will natively run in our system. That makes sense?
Wouldn't it be good, though, to also allow people to just use a particular rule system once we've got it, and then they wouldn't have to go through Golly to get it?
Okay, that's a separate issue. That's basically an issue of string names in things like Turing machine, just like we have string names in Cellular Automaton. And I think we have a data repository collection of rules, don't we? We were supposed to have that. Do we have a collection of rules in the data repository that just translate named rules into specifications? If we don't have that, we should have that. Right? That's the right place for that. Or alternatively, if we really care that much about it, we should put it in the entity system as an entity type, Cellular Automaton rule, where we can have names and linguistics and so on for them. That's probably the right thing to do ultimately. And something that, I mean, I don't know, did you produce an entity store version of the information about Cellular Automata for the data repository, Ed?
Yes, for life, yes.
Okay, I know, but I'm asking for these other rules.
No.
Okay, well, so that would be,
for example, generations.
Okay, so that would be a thing to do. That would be the thing to do, is to make an entity store with those named rules, right? Translating from the names from the entities into our specification for Cellular Automaton. That would be a useful thing to do to achieve this, okay?
Okay.
Right, let's wrap it up here. Shadi, I can give you a few more minutes on this video stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
You can just stay right here, and anybody who wants to stay can stay. Otherwise, people who are not relevant to this can drop off. And okay, let me just take your list of information here. Okay, so these functions. Video. Okay, so this is analogous to the video to image apply and so on, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
You folks still need me around?
No.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Okay, so I mean, the one of these that seems crazy to me is video filter. Maybe I'm wrong that that's crazy, or is that what you mean by a video filter?
This is the one that takes partitions of video and audio data and then processes them in chunks. Would be useful if you're tracking objects, for instance.
Is it the same? Is it analogous to image filter?
In a sense, because you can specify a chunk size, a partition size.
So, okay, so these functions basically are the direct analogs of image apply, image map, etc. Is that true?
Image map, we don't have. Image video map is generalization of map, really.
I see,
So
I see.
the function f can return anything. The output is in a time series.
Yeah, that's pretty
Same
cool.
for video
That's
block
pretty
map.
cool.
The output is time series. The input is just a list of video frames or audio samples.
But so what is the, when you say block map, is that doing essentially a moving average in the, I mean, is it taking a block of video frames at a time or what?
Yes. It could be a moving average if the function f is mean.
Okay, so the issue here was me complaining that this isn't, look, if we have, okay, so let's understand this. So image video apply applies after each frame of the video. So that's analogous to image apply, which applies to each pixel. Is that correct?
Correct.
So what it would look like is video apply of image apply. If I wanted to like recolorize, you know, by pixel, I would say video apply of image apply of whatever.
Yeah, that's a little confusing. You could do video apply of color negate of a video.
No, but I'm saying I could use image apply inside video apply, right?
Of course, yes.
And that is revealing both the, you know, the slight sort of corruption of both these names, because image apply is really image pixel apply, and video apply is really video frame apply.
Correct.
Okay, so the question is, will we regret this? I mean, image apply, you know, so what we're doing here is video is taking things in granularity of frames, whereas the image functions, well, some of them are taking it in granularity of pixels.
Yes.
Does that bother you? I mean, I think it doesn't really bother me that much, because I don't think there's going to be a notion, you know, both images and video seem to have, you know, this digital notion, which I don't think is going to go away. In other words, you can't really imagine, you know, we are dealing with images that are made of pixels and videos that are made of frames. And I don't think either of those is going to change.
Yes, no, that's going to stay.
All right. Okay, let me look at video block map here. And let me look at video filter. How do you specify the duration? Presumably it can be in frame number, or it can be a time in seconds, presumably.
Correct. Yes.
You know, you should say that it can be just an integer, right? That's a number of frames.
Yeah, I'll add that.
Video buffer, a specific duration. So image filter works range R neighborhood. So that's effectively like a cellular automaton with a R by R. Well, no, range R on each side, right? It's consistent with the cellular automaton. So R equals 1 is a single border on each side, correct?
Yes, 2R plus 1 squared.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and this offset mechanism, okay, so is there a similar thing here?
No.
So there's no way of doing...
We always move by a pixel, and it's It may make sense to do it the same for video filter as well. I haven't come across an application yet that I want to move with a different offset.
In which?
Unless
in
you want to
images or
say in video filter. In video filter. In none of them, actually. But for video filter, imagine you're following objects, tracking things. Really, you typically want to offset by 1.
Well, you might also want to downsample.
Exactly. I was going to say, only if you want to do things like downsampling, which I assume we're going to have specific editing function to do downsampling in time or in XY.
That we want another argument to do the offset, because I think that what you're doing here is the duration here. I could imagine that you would want asymmetric duration. No. I'm saying, think about the timestamps that you are generating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's say you say, this explosion happened at t equals 5 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't want, but let's say that the analysis you're doing is not symmetrical around the, the t mark, so to speak, for every t.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm saying you need a way to specify a duration that is, like image filter, asymmetric.
I see.
Right?
But okay. But you see that image filter, our row, our column. Oh, we also have our top, our bottom. That's the case. The asymmetric.
Yes, because that would be analogous. Now I don't know whether I'm not sure if this is a desirable thing, because partition, for example, doesn't work that way. Partition is just an offset kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do we have a function video partition?
We're gonna have not 12.1.
Okay, but is that
it's not difficult? Just that, yes.
No, I understand that, but to go from a video to a list of images, how do you do that?
Currently, there are 2 ways. Either you have the video is just out of core, so you always have a file path. You can import a specific video frame, or else we are introducing the video stream similar to audio stream.
I don't
framework.
think that's a good idea. Look, what we need to be able to do, unlike for audio, where this isn't relevant, you need to be able to get the instantaneous frame at t equals 5 seconds from the video easily.
Something like video take or some such.
Yeah, maybe, but video take will be spans.
Yeah.
I think you want to get something where literally by frame number or by time, maybe with a sub-value from video, you can just extract the image.
Okay. Video frame take, maybe.
What's that?
Just to begin. Video frame take, just to begin.
No, I wouldn't do that because that way you're taking multiple.
Could be one or could be.
Yeah, but no, but why not just do it with sub-values on the video object itself?
Oh.
Is there a reason? Is there an obvious reason why we don't do that for image as well? If you want the pixel value at certain pixel position in image, why not use a sub-value?
No, I guess we could do that. For image, the internal presentation changed at least twice over the versions from. Yeah, I know, but no, the sub-values could work. There is one practical issue for video with which is not, the sub-values could still work, but when you ask for a specific frame, you have to decode all of the frames up to that position. If you say roughly time, yeah, exactly. It takes time if you're cool with it.
If you say roughly time what?
It's okay. The seeking, the approximate time could happen. If you say jump to minute 5, that could be done faster. But if you say jump to frame 1,000.
Okay, fine. Well, okay, that's an argument for why is that faster? Because there are some frames that have already been reconstructed or something that don't require.
Right, exactly.
Okay, but why don't you just go to the most recently reconstructed frame and start reconstructing from there?
Get to a given
frame number.
I have to look into that. I'm not sure, but I'm under the impression.
It's possible because if you can get frame at about 5 minutes, you presumably know which frame number that was, and you go to that approximate frame number, right? And then you go.
I'll have to check on that. Yes.
Sample from there.
what we have discussed with Piotr is that we cannot know when you get a frame that is roughly around 5 minutes. You cannot guarantee this is exactly that frame number that you asked for. But I
understand that,
reconfirm
but I'm saying if you know what frame number it is, then you can go from there. If that gives you frame number 2000 or something, then and you've asked for frame 2015, then you obviously just go to the thing that's whatever system
right,
it is.
but it's not a guaranteed 2000. It's almost.
I know.
Yeah.
Listen to what I'm saying.
Yep.
So you say, get me a frame around 2015. Okay, it goes and fetches frame 2003. Okay.
Yep.
And then, so long as you know that it's frame 2003, you're easily able to go forward some number of frames.
Yeah.
Right? So the only way that it would be bad, which I can't imagine is the case, is if you don't know which frame number the thing you actually extracted is. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
we'll check on that. If we can do it, yeah, we've discussed.
Okay. So hold on a second. So what we want, in this model where you have things like video apply, video filter, and so on, I mean, what does image take do? Image take takes a subpart of the image, right?
Correct.
I'm wondering whether this should simply be, I mean, video take of that comma n could give you a list of the first n frames in the video.
I think that's fair, yes.
And then image take, see, as you say, the thing that people mostly want is give me a frame around the 5-minute mark or something, or another typical thing people are going to want is give me a sequence of frames, give me sort of a thumbnail of the video by getting a sequence of frames every however many seconds. Or they're going to want two things. They're going to want that, and they're going to want give me n frames into spaced through the video.
Yep.
Does the thumbnail function work on video?
It will. The plan is that well, we can discuss that. You and us have never discussed any of this. My proposal is that any image or audio function that makes sense to work on video frames and video audio samples should just work. So image take should just crop the image frames in the video into whatever specification you have specified. Then something like video take is going to be taking or cropping video over time. Thumbnail under that scheme is going to return the whole thumbnailed version of the video. So it's similar. I
don't think that's right. I think thumbnail has got to return a single image thumbnail, because I think that there are too many uses. It's got to do its best to pick out an interesting frame and just return it as a thumbnail.
Okay.
That's the only thing it can do.
Then I think we should go through the whole list of functions to see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense.
Okay, so but the things that are going to be important immediately are this business about extracting frames. Look, you're going to need something which says, okay, so what do we need? We need extract a particular frame. I don't know how important that is. I mean, your extract a frame around this time. Look, what we want is something which says video. What would be the analog in time series to get a thing at a particular time? It's just a sub-value, isn't it?
It is a sub-value, yes.
Right. So I think that's what this should be. I think if you give video and you give a sub-value that has units in it, right? Then you will get the approximate, that approximate frame.
Right.
Right.
And if you give it an integer, we try to get that.
We'll try to give you that exact frame. Now we can have another function that is more sophisticated here, but I think what should happen. Okay, so I think there should be a thing called I'm not sure that's the right term, but it takes a video and an N and gives you N frames of the video, gives you images, N images spaced through the video, right?
I see.
Because that to me is
not necessarily equally spaced?
Well, as equally as we can get them.
Okay.
And the whole point there, I mean, the best thing to do would be with the metadata of each image, with the meta information of each image, giving timestamp information.
Right.
Because that, to me, if I get a random video, that's a super useful operation for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to watch the video, I just want to see the thumbnails, basically. And
right.
And then, presumably, if you say thumbnail of that, you would get the thumbnails, and maybe video sampling could have a third argument that just says thumbnail, that would just sample thumbnails from each of those images without having to be asked, because that might be significantly more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
What are those things called? There's a name for video turned into a bunch of frames, I think. I'm not sure what it is. But whatever it is, I think we need this function. I mean, that just turn it into N frames, where N, I mean, there's some decoration about, do you want a frame at the very beginning? Do you want a frame at the very end? Where do the N frames go? But fundamentally, this is the useful thing. And, for lots of kinds of analysis, and this particular thing, if we do the syntax correctly, could turn into just give me it frame by frame, right? So, like, for example, if we said video sampling a video, and that would be N frames, I don't know whether this is a good idea, but something like that would be give me every single frame, maybe. And this would be, give me, I mean, so there's two cases. Give me N frames. I think we've had this in other functions. Give me N frames spaced out evenly through the video, and give me specifically every frame. I actually, isn't this function? See, that gives you not quite. I mean, you might also want, okay. So the other thing you want from video sampling is give me something that is, yeah, okay. So what do we need here? We need fraction of the way through the video. We need N frames total. We need the nth frame. And we need every nth frame, I think. Those are the obvious things I think to need. And we might need a list of frames which might be faster to extract in one go than in multiple pieces. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
My gosh, I don't have a video subsection here. I'm gonna make one. Go ahead.
For all of those, we probably want some size specification as well.
What do you mean? Oh, you mean the size of the final frame?
Right. Do you want the original size thumbnail or just a specific size?
Okay, so we need a syntax that covers these things, and we need an analog of this. We probably had an analog of this, and maybe we need different functions for several of these, but these seem, okay, let me make a comment. This is one of these icing on the cake type things that we absolutely need.
Yep.
Right? Fairly easy to do, but we absolutely need it.
Okay.
So, I mean, we could call it, I don't know what the N frames total. The nth frame, oh yeah, we not frame, okay, then we also want at some point frame around timestamp T.
Mm-hmm.
What about a thing like that's called something like video images that extracts?
Maybe video frames.
Well, possibly.
Sounds better.
Okay. So then the question is, that could be the total. How do we get the nth frame? And how do we get every nth frame? And we may need a different. See, we got total n versus every nth frame.
Mm-hmm. Seems like the bin specification in histogram and so forth.
Yeah, how does that work? That has.
We typically have double lists and things like that. It's fairly confusing. I don't know if we have wrappers to use for that.
Well, what we have for histogram is comma 1 means one bin, brace 1 means a bin of width 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right. And a double list is just, yeah,
So
exact bin specification.
Right. So in an analog, this would be n things across, and that would mean every n frames. And video frames without an n there would probably just give you every single frame, a list of every single frame.
Which might be crazy. I don't know.
Well, it might be crazy, but if it's a short video, it's not crazy.
Okay.
I mean, if it's an incredibly long video, maybe we default to something. Okay, how about a frame every second?
Yeah, that would be much safer. Currently, we have the same problem in import of a video, comma, image list, which is asking exactly for all frames.
Okay, but so this here, if we give a time here, that could mean well, yeah, I think that means every time, every frame spaced by time.
I'm not sure. It should be consistent with that n case, video, comma, n. If comma n means through the nth frame, 0 through n, time means
No. That's not what that means. That means n frames total through the video.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
And this would be time, and the other case would be a frequency, right? Which is directly analogous, I think, to the, well, I mean, but once we have units, if we say at point 1, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I actually think frequency is going to solve a lot of that. We can just say 1 frame per second or 1 frame per minute or whatever.
Sure, but if you give 1 minute, I think you might as well just assume that's an inverse and take it by frequency, right? The time, you could give the time and assume that that's the frequency. That means 1 per that amount of time.
I see. Okay. All right. I'm probably confusing this with video take, which would return a video of a given time, which is every single consecutive frame. Right.
Yeah,
this you really want this spaced over time.
Yes. Right, which is why it's called video frames. I like this. I think this is pretty good.
I may suggest we make it a bit more specific, like video sample frames, because video frames may be confusing that you really want a span of frames. In fact, we could also support span here.
Yeah, we could support span.
So maybe not.
Well,
don't
hold
know.
on,
We can
hold
play
on,
with
hold on, hold
this.
on, hold on. That's n frames total, but indexing into a video, I strongly think should be done by video blah blah blah, and then just the
Okay,
the
just
thing there.
n or n through m, and okay.
The only question with that is if there's a span. I mean, that should be the video frames as a list. I mean, this would be an image here. Now, what about audio sampling? I mean, in other words, if you want audio, do you want that? How would you get audio sampled every, and that relates again to your video map, right? Because what you want, let's say I want a sample, I want it to be, I want to hear 2 seconds of audio every minute in the video, right? E.g., 2 seconds of audio every minute in the video. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what? We need a separate review about this stuff. Why don't you have a think about this stuff in the next few days? Let's try and review this. These functions are all easy to build, but let's not make an icing mistake.
And do you want all the icing for 12.1?
Yes, because we're not going to be able to announce video. It's one of these things where we announce fantastical, computational geometry, we forget to put in triangles. This is stuff we need. This is much more elementary than what you already have, but we need something here.
Okay.
I mean, this is the simple stuff, right?
This is the simple stuff. Hopefully we have all the big stuff merged by Sunday or Monday.
I understand. You've got the difficult things. Typical mistake, right? You've done the difficult stuff, but now there's some easy stuff. We got to do the easy stuff, because if we release it without the easy stuff, people will just be confused.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't you have a think about this? Why don't you get a meeting set up with me in the next few days, couple of days, and let's see if we can iterate this. This shouldn't be too hard. I mean, this looks.
Okay.
I mean, let me just send this to you. Okay, very good. Thanks very much. See you all. So actually, we have a bunch of comments here on our live stream. Are you still here, Shadi?
Yep.
If you address frame by subvalue, then also allow range. Yes, we agree with that. It'd be great to be able to create a thumbnail list of video, which will be every n frames. Yep. We weren't paying attention here, but yes, agreed. Video subsample or overload downsample. Now that's a decent idea. Okay, Brian from our live stream says it'd be useful to be able to find all the key frames and return them or their indexes, because they won't need to be reconstructed. Yes, I agree. Yeah, I mean, so then, in a sense, that would be, video blah blah blah. I mean, one could say just keyframes. I don't know whether that's a good idea. Right. I mean, oh yeah, that's a good point. So Sandra is pointing out, if you do time as the video frames thing, then then it might not be, it might offset, it might not align with the frame rate. But that's life. I mean, the number of frames, if you ask for time, you're going to get something that is roughly that amount of time. If you want frames, then ask for a number of frames.
Right.
Audio, wouldn't you want to find the start of the audio for a particular frame? Yes, you probably would. You probably want what you probably want. Okay, so you might want, e.g., a collection of frames together with, a second of audio or something starting at that frame, or possibly not starting at that frame. So how would you return that? You would have an image and an audio. That would be a pair, image and audio. What's that?
Yep, that's one representation. Yep.
Okay, so I agree that there's a, okay, hold on. I mean, there's a video. Okay, look, you've said video take, right? So video take of a video returns a video, basically. And that
Yes.
video take could have a frame number, and obviously it would work just like take. So a frame number would be n frames from the beginning, or it could be a time, presumably.
Yes. Yep.
Now, and that would allow you, now there's a question here about downsampling, of whether, I think it's obscure to call it video downsample and have it return, n little thumbnails. I think, well, video downsample is a different issue of just getting a video that has been downsampled. And presumably that's doable with video take by just giving a video take with, I mean, you could, if you really wanted to, you do this to get a downsampled video. It's a little bit good. Well, it's not that bad. But so that is video to video. And I don't know what happens to the audio when you downsample. What happens to the audio when you downsample?
We do have audio resample.
Well, but when you downsample every 100 frames, it's like, what are you going to do with the audio?
Oh, yeah. It's not going to sound good, whatever we do.
Well, I understand,
but we can sample it.
Yes, but I'm not sure that that's what one wants to do. I mean, that one might want to treat the audio differently in that case. Like you might want to downsample the video. I don't really see how you do this. Well, if it's video to video, there's really nothing you can do other than just sample a piece of audio, I think.
Yeah. But
the case where you want to get frames out, I mean, that's where we're dealing with video frames. And I mean, I'm trying to think what you want. Okay, so look, the obvious thing to do if you want frames, is not try and put the start and end point inside the frames, but just do a video take and then say video frames of the video take, if you want to get a particular start and end point. Yeah. All right. Well, have a think about this. Why are you unhappy about the name video frames here? Because it seems like that's exactly what it's giving you, is that collection of frames.
I'm not anymore. I was thinking if we are looking into taking full span of frames with video frames, then that's not easily allowing us to do that. But with the sub value that you're
right. But also what you would do is you would say video frames. Okay, so this in fact would I recant here, and I'd say get every frame. Or maybe maybe a heuristic.
Yeah.
If it's just absurd to get every frame. Maybe. I mean, what we could do, we could define it as being the min of, either a 1 second, 1 frame. I'm not sure. Okay, so here's what we could do. We could have a max items option here in video frames. And if you hit max items, something like that, it could start downsampling. But in the case where if you want, video take video, and then you would say time 1, time 2, or frame number, but those are distinguishable by units.
Yep.
Right? Then that's how you would get all frames from time 1 to time 2. And if you really wanted DT, you would do DT here. And yes, you might not align. Okay, so what you would have to do here is that DT could be not a time unit, but like a 3, for example. That means step by frames within that time interval.
Yep, makes sense.
Now, I also think you need to make sure that at some point that we support date interval. I suspect there's a time interval coming as well, but I mean that's just a a detail for that. This will be very nice. This should be very easy. Let's I would like to see this, and particularly video frames for, you know, comma n for a total of n frames to summarize a video. Seems highly useful.
Are we down to these two functions then? Video take, oh no, video take, video frames, and
And the
sub value.
sub-value.
Okay.
I think the one thing that, okay, so probably what we want here is the special case of video frames. Yeah, I'm taking this back here. This isn't right. Well, I don't know, that we could have that there. But if we say video frames, video, oh, actually, this is another possible meaning. Well, keyframes, then that would give the, I don't even know how are keyframes defined. Are they defined by the image, by the compression algorithm?
I don't know. I think so. I think it's going to be different for each encoding.
Okay. And presumably we can query somehow the number of keyframes that exists in a video.
If, yeah, again, depends probably on the encoding, but I'll look into it.
Okay.
it.
Okay, great. All right.
But I think that string setting keyframes is going to open up possibility of a lot of other string settings as well that might be useful.
I agree. And I could even imagine that thing arrow something to be more specific and so on. All right, this is actually, this video stuff is obviously much more important than the RLE stuff, which I consider to be kind of a detail. Nice to have, but a detail. So, you know, if there's a choice in priorities, you know what to do.
Yes.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Thanks to the folks on the live stream as well. See you all later.